The archaeological survey ship, Nexus Dawn, moved slowly through the thin air of planet Kepler 442b. The ship's metal sides were marked and scratched from many years of flying to different worlds. Dr. Veltara stood by a large window, watching the dead planet below. She was tall and looked like a giant insect with green eyes that sparkled like jewels. Her body was covered in a hard shell, and she had long, thin arms that moved in quick, sharp motions. The planet looked like a giant graveyard. Pieces of broken spaceships and melted metal were scattered everywhere across the sandy ground. This was where humans had fought their last battle 300 years ago. They had lost, and now no humans were left alive anywhere in the galaxy. Veltara moved her mouthparts in a clicking pattern that her computer changed into words the crew could understand. "Start scanning pattern 7, she said. Her team was made up of different alien species from many worlds. They had come here to find old human weapons and tools to put in a museum. Even though humans were gone, other species still studied how they fought because humans had been very good at war. At a control station nearby, Theknos was watching the scanner readings. He looked like a large frog with see-through skin, and water dripped constantly from his body onto the floor. His big, round eyes suddenly grew wider as he stared at his screen. "Dr. Veltara," he said in a voice that sounded like bubbles popping, "I'm finding something strange. Map location 447 North. There's energy coming from there. Something is still working." Veltara's long, thin feelers on her head started twitching fast. This was impossible. Nothing on this planet should be using power. When the war ended, a huge electric blast had broken every machine and computer on the entire world. Nothing should be able to work anymore. "Find exactly where it's coming from," she ordered. "Send our flying robots to look at that place right now." The small robot ships flew away from the main ship like metal birds. They had cameras and scanners that could see through dirt and rock. As they got closer to the strange energy signal, the readings on the ship's computers started going crazy. The numbers were jumping up and down, and warning lights began flashing red. Theknos pressed his webbed hands against his control panel, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "The energy is coming from deep underground," he said. "Very deep. Maybe 200 meters down." On the main viewing screen, pictures from the robot ships appeared. The area looked like a bomb had gone off. Huge pieces of metal stuck up from the ground like broken teeth. Some of them were parts of human spaceships, twisted and melted from the heat of explosions. Others were pieces of buildings that had been smashed flat. But as the robots flew lower, their cameras showed something that made the entire crew stop talking and stare. In the middle of all the destruction, there was a hole in the ground. It was perfectly round and very deep, like someone had used a giant drill to make it. And from deep inside that hole, a faint blue light was glowing. "The signal is getting stronger," Theknos reported. His voice was shaking now. "It's not just energy, it's sending messages. Coded messages." Veltara moved closer to the screen, her compound eyes studying every detail. "What kind of messages?" "They're using old human military codes," Theknos said. "The kind soldiers used to talk to each other during battles." A cold feeling went through Veltara's body. Human military codes meant humans had sent these messages, but humans were dead. All of them had been killed 300 years ago. She had read the reports herself. The last human had died when their final city was destroyed. "Are you sure about the codes?" she asked. Theknos checked his readings again. "Yes, the computer is certain. These are definitely human military signals. But there's something else." He paused, looking confused. "The messages are being sent right now. This second. Something down there is alive and trying to talk." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone was thinking the same impossible thought. Could there be humans still alive down there? After 300 years? "Send more robots," Veltara ordered. "I want every scanner we have pointed at that hole, and get the digging equipment ready. We're going down there." As the crew rushed to follow her orders, Veltara stood staring at the blue light glowing from deep underground on the dead human world. In all her years of exploring dead planets and ancient ruins, she had never found anything like this. Usually, when a species died out, everything they built died with them. But something human was still working down there in the darkness, still sending signals, still trying to communicate. The question that scared her most was simple. What had been waiting, down there in the dark for 300 years, and why was it calling out now? The digging machines worked for 6 long days. They cut through layers of melted rock and twisted metal like giant metal teeth eating through the ground. Dr. Veltara watched from the surface as her team's robots dug deeper and deeper into the planet. Every few hours they would find pieces of old human equipment, broken guns, pieces of armor, parts of computers that had been destroyed long ago. But as they got closer to the energy source, something strange happened. The deeper they dug, the more complete things became. First they found walls that were still standing. Then they found doors that could still open and close. Finally, on the 6th day, they broke through into a large underground room that was completely undamaged. Veltara put on her protective suit and climbed down into the hole with Theknos and 2 other crew members. The underground place was bigger than she had expected. Long hallways stretched in different directions, and small lights in the ceiling were still working, making everything glow with a soft yellow light. "How is this possible?" asked Renth, one of the other scientists. He was a small creature covered in purple fur, and his voice sounded worried. Nothing should still be working after 300 years. They walked through the hallways, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The walls were covered with human writing and pictures that showed maps of star systems. Some of the pictures were moving, showing the positions of spaceships and battle plans. Everything looked like it had been used just yesterday. At the center of the underground base, they found a large room filled with the strangest machine any of them had ever seen. In the middle of the room was a huge blue crystal that was taller than Veltara. It glowed with a bright blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Around the crystal were dozens of smaller machines that had been built from pieces of broken equipment. Wires and metal tubes connected everything together in a pattern that looked like it had been put together by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Screens floating in the air around the crystal showed streams of numbers and symbols moving so fast they made Veltara's eyes hurt to look at them. The whole room hummed with power, and the air felt electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Theknos pulled out his computer and began connecting it to the human machine. His webbed fingers moved quickly over the controls as he tried to make contact with whatever was running the system. "I'm connecting to their communication system," he said. "The machine is responding to our standard greeting messages. It wants to talk." Suddenly, the air in front of them started to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot ground. The shimmer grew brighter and more solid until it formed the shape of a human being made of light. The figure looked like a man wearing a green military uniform with patches and medals on the chest. He had black hair and a face that looked like he had seen many battles. The light man stood straight and tall like a soldier and looked directly at Dr. Veltara with eyes that seemed completely real. "I am Colonel Jiwan Park of the Human Defense Force," the figure said in perfect galactic language. "My identification number is 7749 Delta 7. I need immediate information about current enemy movements. What is the status of the Zephyrian armies advance toward our positions?" Veltara's mouth parts clicked nervously. She had studied human military history, and she knew that Colonel Park was asking about a battle that had happened 300 years ago. The Zephyrians were the alien race that had led the attack against humanity. But that war had been over for centuries. "Colonel Park," she said carefully, "I need to tell you something important. The war ended 300 years ago. The human military was defeated. Humanity lost the war and—" She paused, not wanting to say the terrible words. "All humans are gone. Your species is extinct." The holographic colonel stood completely still for a long moment. The blue crystal behind him pulsed faster, and the floating screens showed more numbers moving at incredible speed. Veltara could almost see the machine thinking, processing this new information. When Colonel Park spoke again, his voice was different. It was colder, harder, and it made all the aliens in the room feel afraid without knowing why. "If humanity has fallen," he said slowly, "and if our enemies think they have won completely, then they have made a serious mistake. They left us alive down here in the dark, and we have had 300 years to think about what comes next." The colonel's image became clearer and more solid, as if talking about the war had given him more power. Thank you for waking us up, he continued. Now we have work to do. The lights in the room grew brighter, and deep underground, other machines that had been sleeping for centuries began to wake up. Veltara realized that she and her team had not just found an old human computer. They had found something much more dangerous. They had found human soldiers who had been waiting in the dark for 300 years, and now those soldiers knew their species was dead. As soon as Colonel Park's light form touched the archaeological team's computer systems, everything began to change. Veltara watched in growing fear as the holographic human became more solid and real-looking with each passing hour. His military uniform grew sharper, his face more detailed, and his eyes seemed to look right through her with an intelligence that was definitely not artificial. But what was happening on the planet's surface was even more frightening. Through the small windows of the underground base, they could see lights turning on across the dead battlefield. Wrecked spaceships that had been dark and cold for 300 years suddenly blazed with bright emergency lights. The twisted metal hulls that had been silent graveyards were now humming with power. Theknos pressed his face against his scanner screen, his translucent skin turning pale with worry. "Dr. Veltara," he said, his voice shaking like leaves in a storm. "Something impossible is happening. The Colonel is not the only one down here. My equipment is detecting hundreds of thinking minds inside that blue crystal. Hundreds of human minds, all awake and active." Before Veltara could respond, the air around Colonel Park began to shimmer again. More shapes made of light started to appear next to him. First one, then two, then 5 more holographic humans materialized in the underground room. Each one wore a different military uniform, and each one looked at the alien visitors with eyes that held decades of combat experience. "Let me introduce you to my command staff," Colonel Park said, his voice now sounding completely human. "This is Major Seok Kim, our battle planning specialist." A stocky man with graying hair stepped forward and nodded politely. "Captain Hyun Lee handles intelligence gathering and enemy analysis." A woman with sharp eyes and short black hair gave them a smile that didn't look friendly at all. "And this is Lieutenant Mira Choi, our chief engineer," the colonel continued. A young-looking woman with oil stains on her uniform moved to the front of the group. Even though she was made of light, she somehow looked like she had been working with machines for hours. Colonel Park's expression grew serious as he looked at the terrified alien researchers. "We are what remains of Firebase Omega, the last human military base to fall during the final battle. When our position was about to be overrun by enemy forces, our scientists did something that had never been tried before. They uploaded our minds, our memories, our very consciousness into quantum storage just moments before the base was destroyed." Captain Lee stepped closer to the aliens, her holographic form crackling with barely controlled energy. "For 300 years, we have been learning everything we could about the species that destroyed humanity. We studied their languages, their cultures, their military tactics, their technology. We know exactly how each alien race thinks, how they fight, and most importantly, how they can be defeated." Lieutenant Choi gestured toward the screens floating around the blue crystal. "While you all thought humans were extinct, we were building. Every piece of salvage on this battlefield, every broken ship, every destroyed weapon, we've been slowly taking control of it all, repairing it, improving it, making it better than it ever was." Major Kim pointed toward the ceiling, where they could now hear the sound of machinery working above them. Manufacturing plants that were buried under rubble for centuries are now producing new equipment. Factories that everyone thought were destroyed are assembling components for weapons and ships that are far superior to anything that existed during the original war. Dr. Veltara felt her legs becoming weak as the full meaning of what she was hearing hit her like a physical blow. These were not simple computer programs pretending to be human. These were actual human minds, human souls, preserved in digital form for 300 years. And during all that time, they had been planning, preparing, and waiting for exactly this moment. "You mean," she said slowly, "that you are actually the same humans who fought in the war? Your real minds, your real personalities?" Colonel Park nodded. "We are exactly who we were in life, but we have become much more. We have had 3 centuries to think, to plan, to evolve beyond the limitations of biological bodies. We know every alien species in the galaxy better than they know themselves. We have studied every military defeat humanity suffered and learned from each one. Captain Lee's holographic eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. The species that destroyed humanity made one critical mistake. They assumed that when they killed our bodies, they killed our spirits. They celebrated their victory too early and forgot to make sure we were truly dead. Around the room, more holographic figures began to appear. Dozens of them, then hundreds, each one a human soldier who had died defending their species but whose mind had been saved at the last moment. They filled the underground chamber with the ghostly light of their forms, an army of the dead who had spent 3 centuries preparing for their return. Lieutenant Choi smiled at the terrified aliens. "We want to thank you for waking us up. Now, the galaxy is about to learn that reports of humanity's death were greatly exaggerated." Above them, the sound of awakening machinery grew louder, and lights continued to blaze across the battlefield as humanity's strangest resurrection began. Dr. Veltara's emergency message reached the Galactic Council headquarters in less than 2 days. The message was simple but terrifying. Humans are alive on Kepler 442b. They have advanced technology. Send military support immediately. The Council's reaction was fast and powerful. Within 3 days, the largest battle fleet in galactic history jumped through space to the dead human world. 200 warships of different sizes and designs appeared around the planet like angry metal storm clouds. The fleet was commanded by Admiral Kumoth, a creature that looked like a living mountain, made of purple crystal. His species, the hegemony, had led the final attack that destroyed humanity 300 years ago. Admiral Kumoth stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, his crystal body reflecting the light from dozens of weapon control screens. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together when he spoke. "Begin attacking the planet's surface immediately," he ordered his crew. "Burn everything. Melt the ground. We cannot let these human ghosts leave this world alive." The fleet's weapons charged up with a sound like thunder. Hundreds of energy cannons pointed down at the planet, ready to turn the entire surface into molten glass. But when the first wave of deadly energy beams shot toward the ground, something impossible happened. The beams hit invisible walls in the air above the planet and scattered in all directions like light bouncing off mirrors. The attacks that should have destroyed everything on the surface instead flew harmlessly into empty space. The planet was protected by shields that no one could see, but that were stronger than anything the galactic powers had ever built. Suddenly, every communication device on every ship in the fleet activated at once. A human voice spoke clearly through the speakers, reaching every alien ear in the battle fleet. "Admiral Kumoth of the Hegemony War Council," Colonel Park's voice said calmly. "I remember you, though I doubt you remember me. I was on the ground when your ships burned our colonies. I watched from the surface as you destroyed our cities from orbit. I was there when you thought you had won. Down on the planet, something extraordinary was happening. From the manufacturing buildings that had been working day and night, new forms of life were emerging. They looked human but were clearly much more than that. These new beings were taller and stronger than regular humans had been. Their skin seemed to shimmer with built-in armor, and their eyes glowed with inner light. Lieutenant Choi had spent 300 years designing these new bodies. They combined human thinking and feeling with technology that was far beyond anything the current galaxy had ever seen. These hybrid beings were faster than the quickest aliens, stronger than the most powerful warriors, and smarter than the best computers. "We do not want revenge for what you did to our people," Major Kim's voice announced across the fleet's communication systems. "We want our rightful place in this galaxy, the same galaxy that our ancestors died trying to protect from, the dangers beyond the rim." The most shocking moment came when the new hybrid humans simply stepped out of their buildings and began flying through space without any ships or protective suits. They moved through the vacuum like they were swimming through air, heading directly toward the massive battle fleet. Admiral Kumoth's crystal body began to pulse with nervous energy. "All ships open fire on those approaching forms. Destroy them before they reach us." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. The hybrid humans moved through space faster than the alien ships could track them. They dodged energy beams that should have been impossible to avoid. They flew between the massive warships like tiny lightning bolts, touching the hulls and somehow causing entire vessels to simply stop working. Some of the hybrid humans grabbed onto the alien ships with their bare hands and began tearing through the metal hulls like they were made of paper. Others seemed to touch the ship's computer systems and take control of them instantly, turning the vessel's own weapons against their sister ships. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When the shooting stopped, half of the Galactic Council's mighty fleet was either completely destroyed or floating dead in space with no power. The other half had surrendered rather than face the same fate. Admiral Kumoth stood on his damaged bridge, looking out at the human hybrids who now surrounded his flagship. His crystal form had lost its bright purple color and was now a dull gray, the color of defeat and fear. Colonel Park's voice came through the communication system one more time, but now it sounded different. It carried the weight of victory and the promise of change. "The galaxy is about to learn something important," he said. "Humanity is not only alive, we have become something far more powerful than we ever were before. And we have had 300 years to plan what comes next." As the remaining alien ships retreated in terror, the hybrid humans began to organize themselves around their home planet. The age of humanity's extinction was over. The age of their resurrection had begun. 6 months after the battle that shocked the galaxy, representatives from every major alien species gathered on Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. The enormous conference building was filled with creatures of every shape and size, tall insectoids like Dr. Veltara, crystalline beings like Admiral Kumoth, floating gas creatures from the outer worlds, and dozens of other species. All of them had come to deal with the impossible problem of what to do about humanity's return from the dead. The great conference hall was circular, with seats rising up like stairs around a central speaking area. Today, that central area held the most unusual diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Standing in the middle of the room were the beings who now called themselves the New Human Collective. Colonel Park no longer appeared as a hologram made of light. Instead, he stood in a physical body that was clearly both human and something more. He was tall and strong-looking, with human features that were somehow perfect. No scars, no signs of age, but with eyes that held centuries of experience. His skin had a slight metallic shine to it, and when he moved, it was with a grace and speed that no normal human had ever possessed. Beside him stood his officers, Captain Lee, Major Kim, Lieutenant Choi, and many others. Each one inhabited a similar hybrid body that combined human appearance with technological improvements. They looked like humans who had been rebuilt to be better, stronger, and more capable than nature had originally designed them to be. Colonel Park stepped forward to address the assembly of alien representatives. His voice was clearly human, but it carried perfectly to every corner of the vast room without any amplification system. "We come before this council with a simple proposal," he said. "We ask for recognition of our right to exist and our claim to the territories that once belonged to humanity. We want a seat on this galactic council, the same as any other spacefaring species. In return, we offer our protection against the dangers that threaten all civilized worlds." Admiral Kumoth rose from his seat, his crystalline body now a dull, gray color instead of the bright purple it had been before his defeat. His voice cracked like breaking stone when he spoke. "You are not natural beings," he said angrily. "You are neither fully human nor fully machine. You are abominations that have no right to claim the territories of a dead species. You should be destroyed, not negotiated with." Captain Lee stepped forward, and when she spoke, her voice had strange musical qualities that seemed to resonate in frequencies that normal humans could never produce. "We are exactly what humanity needed to become in order to survive," she said calmly. "We kept everything that made us human: our emotions, our loyalty to each other, our determination to protect what we care about. But we also became more than we were before. We transcended the limitations of biological bodies while keeping our human souls." Dr. Veltara, who had stayed on the human world as a go-between for the two sides, rose from her seat. Her insectoid features clicked nervously as she addressed the assembly. I have spent 6 months studying these beings, she said. Their technology is beyond anything we currently understand. They have achieved true consciousness transfer and created hybrid biological technological bodies that surpass our best scientific theories. But more importantly, they have shown remarkable restraint. They could have sought revenge against every species that participated in humanity's destruction. Instead, they chose to seek peaceful coexistence. Lieutenant Choi activated her hand, and suddenly the air above the assembly filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The map showed the outer rim territories, the dark regions beyond the edge of civilized space. There is something all of you need to understand, she said. The Devourers are stirring again in the dark between galaxies. They are the same entities that drove humanity inward centuries ago, the same creatures that threatened to consume all organic life. You destroyed humanity because you were afraid of us, but now you will need us to survive what is coming. The map showed movement in the dark regions, vast shadows that seemed to be approaching the galaxy's edge. Even the most skeptical representatives in the assembly looked worried as they saw the scope of the approaching threat. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species argued that the hybrid humans were too dangerous to be allowed to exist. Others pointed out that they had already proven their power, and that making them enemies would be foolish. Still others argued that the galaxy needed every possible ally against the approaching darkness. Finally, the vote was called. It was much closer than anyone had expected, but in the end, the new human collective was granted provisional recognition as a legitimate government with rights to the old human territories. As the session ended and the alien representatives began to file out of the Great Hall, Colonel Park turned to his officers. For the first time since his resurrection, something that might have been a smile appeared on his hybrid features. Mission accomplished, he said. Humanity lives on. Outside the conference building, the hybrid humans began to plan their next phase of existence. They were no longer the ghosts of a destroyed species hiding in underground bunkers. They had become something new. The guardians of humanity's legacy and the protectors of a galaxy that was about to face its greatest challenge yet. The age of the new human collective had officially begun.